Schertz Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. For the people that are here tonight, apologize for the conditions with the air conditioning. Hopefully that'll get fixed pretty soon, but we do have in a little break room back off here, refrigerator with some water and some stuff. If y'all feel a need to cool off a little bit, feel free to help yourselves back there. Next item on our agenda is the hearing of residents. We have one person signed up on the hearing of residents. James Dodson says you're here to speak on the rezoning. With the hearing of residents, you're free to speak to it. Also, we will have a public hearing for the rezoning. Most people that are here for rezoning issues tend to speak during the public hearing, but you're free to speak both at hearing of residents and at the public hearing if you so desire. So, Mr. Dodson, if yes, please. If you would, please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to bring up a couple issues.
Your name and address, please.
Yeah, so it's James Dodson, 11713 Cypress Barn, and that's in Schertz 78154.
Thank you.
In the Willow Grove subdivision. So, as I understand the proposal to rezone that lot adjacent to Schaefer Road and off 1518, just a couple things that I'd like to bring up. One is, as we build more and more in that corridor, in that area, I don't know if the infrastructure is there to support it safely. And what I mean by that is the road is one lane in either direction. It's crumbling. There's one traffic light. Since I've moved in a couple of years ago, we've put in a elementary school adjacent to a middle school. We have cross vines across the way, and we have another subdivision behind Corbett Junior High School. So what I'd like to put on the record is, as you think through this and we develop 1518, which is inevitable, I think, my comments would be, why don't we put the infrastructure in place first, develop it, and make sure it's safe for everybody. I mean, that's a 55-mile zone. We live in Schertz. 3009 is kind of the biggest road in Schertz, and that's considerably less. So on this crumbling road with not so great infrastructure, we have 55 miles an hour, we have kids running all around there, and now we're going to build more. So again, the point would be, my point would be, our recommendation would be, let's improve the infrastructure before we go adding any more businesses or structures to that corridor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Does anybody else wish to speak at the hearing of residents, or you want to reserve your comments for the public hearing? All right, seeing nobody coming up, let's move on to the next item. Next item on our agenda is 3A, the consent agenda, minutes for the August 22nd, 2018 regular meeting, and 3B, PC 2016-016, an extension. Consider and act upon a request for approval of a time extension for the final plat of Ryan Valley Subdivision Unit 2, an approximately 16-acre tract consisting of 70 single-family residential lots, generally located on Lower Seguin Road, 3,000 feet east of the intersection of Lower Seguin Road and FM 1518. Commissioners, do we need to remove any of these items for consideration?
3B, please.
Can we correct the minutes without pulling them off consent and discussing them?
No, we would need to pull them off. Are you referring to the one designation there on number 5? Just for the rest of the commissioners, so you're aware, there was a error that we discovered this morning in the staff meeting on 5A, where it mentions the motion where Mr. Broder moved to approve, and Mr. Bacon seconded the motion. Obviously, it's Ms. Bacon, and staff will correct that for the minutes as we publish them. Is there anything else?
3B, please.
I'm sorry?
Pull 3B.
Pull 3B. All right, so remaining on the consent agenda is the minutes for the August 22nd, 2018 regular meeting. I call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye. All right. 5 ayes, 1 nay. Motion carries. All right, for 3B, Bryce.
Yes, so this item is a request for a time extension on a final plat for Rhine Valley. I guess I will open it up to y'all for whatever question you have, Mr. Bro.
Hopefully a simple answer.
Sure.
What, excuse me. It's listed in here that it was delayed for utility conflicts.
Yep.
What type of utility conflicts what were the issues down there?
It's issues in infrastructure, I believe, with electric and yeah. Come on up, Bert. You can help out with this. Is Bert Wellman, the project engineer.
Good evening, Bert Wellman with KFW Engineers. So to answer your question, there was two conflicts on Lower Seguin Road. We're doing a road widening in conjunction with our construction requirements to improve Lower Seguin Road. We had to move an AT&T pedestal and also relocate a utility pole. Well, the issue with that is that there's a Canyon Regional water line that's directly adjacent to the right-of-way. And so there's been some back and forth with Canyon Regional, and they're basically both utility companies are having to work through issues with Canyon Regional, and so we need some more time so that we can construct that road. We'll get the utilities out of the way, construct the road, and then ultimately record the plat. So that's where we're at.
Thank you. There's a lot going on down there, so I just wanted to know a little bit more about it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, anything else, Commissioners? All right, I have a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve PC 2016-016, the extension of Rhine Valley Subdivision Unit 2 Final Plat, 6-month extension as presented.
Second.
All right, motion by Commissioner Burrows, second by Mr. Greenwald. Any other comments? All right, call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 6 ayes, no nays, motion passes. All right. Next item on our agenda, public hearing. Item 4A, ZC 2018-005. Hold a public hearing, consider and make a recommendation to City Council on a request to rezone approximately 1.8 acres of land from single-family residential / agricultural district RA and general business GB to neighborhood services and S located northwest of the intersection of FM 1518 and West Schaefer Road. Emily.
Good evening, Commissioners. So just to get your bearings for the subject property, this is FM 1518 and this is Schaefer Road. And then the subject property is outlined here in green. It's approximately 1.8 acres. A portion of it, 0.672 acres, is currently zoned single-family residential agricultural. And then the other portion is currently zoned general business. 14 public hearing notices were sent out on August 30th. With a public hearing notice to be published in the San Antonio Express News prior to City Council meeting. Additionally, on August 30th, the zoning notification signs that were adopted were placed on the subject property. At the time of this presentation, we have received 21 opposition responses identified here by the red stars, 4 of which are within that original notification buffer that actually received the notification letters, and the others are outside of that 200-foot buffer. So as you can see here, those are those 4 responses that we did receive from the letters that were sent out. Subject property is generally located northwest of the intersection of 1518 and Schaefer Road. It extends approximately 172 feet adjacent to 1518 and 290 feet adjacent to West Schaefer Road, and the subject property is currently undeveloped. The comprehensive land use plan through the future land use plan and the Schertz sector plan identify the property as mixed use neighborhood. The subject property here is identified by the yellow star. The objectives for mixed-use neighborhood encourages a mix of residential uses as well as limited commercial development. The proposed rezoning is generally in conformance with that goal of the limited commercial development with the proposal of neighborhood services. Neighborhood services does allow for that limited commercial and is generally the commercial designation that is used adjacent to residential properties. So as I had mentioned, the first portion of the subject property is currently zoned general business, and then the back portion is single-family residential agricultural. To the north, there is the remainder of the parent tract that's general business and single-family residential. To the west is single-family residential, also undeveloped and vacant. To the south, you have Schaefer Road right-of-way, and to the east, you have FM 1518 right-of-way. So some of the differences between the general business that's currently there and the requested neighborhood services. So I wanted to kind of highlight, out of our Unified Development Code, we have a permitted uses table that lists many different land uses and then where it's allowed by right in different zoning districts. So everything that you see on the screen right now is allowed by right in general business. The items that are highlighted in orange would be allowed by the neighborhood services. So as you can see, many of the land uses that would be allowed by right in that first portion of the property would no longer be allowed if the neighborhood services was approved. It's essentially a downgrade in the commercial zoning designation, limiting what land uses we would prefer to have immediately adjacent to residential properties. The proposed rezoning should have a minimal impact on the existing water system. There is currently an 8-inch water line within Schaefer and a 12-inch water line adjacent to 1518. The subject property does not currently have sanitary sewer infrastructure. However, if this zoning is approved through the platting and site development process, they would be required to evaluate and determine their sanitary sewer. The proposed zoning of Neighborhood Services District would provide for commercial uses that are appropriate and compatible with the adjacent residential and also consistent with what the Comprehensive Land Use Plan and the Schertz Sector Plan identified as desired for that limited commercial. Staff is making a recommendation of approval of the proposed rezoning as submitted, and the applicant is present if there's any questions.
All right, does the applicant have any presentation to make, or they're just here?
Hi, good evening. My name is Ashley Fairman. I work in San Antonio for a law firm called Kaufman and Killen. I do want to introduce Andres Pena with my office, as well as Casey Genovese. Casey is the engineer for the project, so hopefully we can address any questions that come up in the hearing this evening. I don't have a formal presentation for you all, but I do want to say that we feel like this site is appropriate for a Dollar General, and we are happy to downzone it to the neighborhood services at that hard corner. I know there have been some questions about infrastructure, which we can try to answer. In terms of traffic, the idea here is to capture neighborhoods and people who already live in the area and who are passing by. The Dollar General is supposed to serve as a convenience for those people. So in terms of impact, it should not be much, but there will be a dedication of right-of-way for the expansion of 1518, as well as some improvements at that hard corner to make sure that the trucks who do service the Dollar General can do that safely and on proper infrastructure. So with that said, we're happy to answer any questions that you may have. I know there may be questions about aesthetics and other things like that. So thank you.
All right, for those here for this public hearing, we'll open the public hearing. Anybody that wishes to come up and speak or ask questions, please come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. And then any questions that you have, staff will record them, and once we close the public hearing, staff and or the applicant will answer those questions. So time is 6:14. We'll open the public hearing.
My name is Denise Torres. My address is 11705 Cypress Barn, Schertz, 78154.
Is the green light on the little console?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Would you like me to repeat?
Please.
My name is Denise Torres. My address is 11705 Cypress Barn in Schertz, 78154. Based on the target of Dollar General in the rural neighborhoods, there are already a number of Dollar Generals based on their own website within the 10-mile radius when you search. There are 2 right here in Schertz as we passed on the way here. So there are 16 within 10 miles of the radius already. And I'm also similarly concerned, like my fellow neighbors, about the traffic, the infrastructure, and the nearby children. It also doesn't seem to serve, at least from the neighbors that I live nearby, the type of services that we'd like to see right next door and adjacent to us. I know it is opinion and perhaps less factual, but I think that some of these neighborhood services, like Dollar General, do bring by a different amount of traffic, a different type of customer. And in observing different Dollar Generals, I think they also provide other litter and traffic that is not well kept in the neighborhood. And I'd like to certainly maintain our nearby home value for that. So if they have something to address that, I'm certainly open to hearing that. But I'm concerned there's already enough Dollar Generals, and I'd like to see that land used for agricultural or perhaps another purpose.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Bryce, can you see if we can get the volume turned up on the...
Directly into the mic.
Again, it's Jim Dodson, 11713 Cypress Barn, 78154. So I understand I can ask questions now as well. Is that appropriate, Commissioner?
Yes, you won't receive an answer until after we close the public hearing, but staff will record your questions and try to answer them.
Thank you. Okay, so the first one would be kind of dovetailing on what the lady said just before me, was the increased crime that usually tends to follow the building or establishment of Dollar General stores. I would just like to know what kind of safeguards are going to be put in place, cameras, surveillance that would appease the neighbors that live in this very rural, very safe community. Second, the hours of operation. I'd be interested in knowing, if we're going to follow some kind of quiet hours, if we're going to have trucks resupplying the store at all hours, midnight, 1, 2 in the morning. We'd be very interested in that. Also, would be very interested in where the trucks are going to actually enter to resupply. Is it going to be on Schaefer or off 1518? Schaefer is a very rural road and abuts Willow Grove subdivision, and you would basically be in our backyard. And then third, if the Dollar General were to go in, is there going to be some kind of wall or something to mask the facility, maybe leaving the trees that are already there, those old growth trees? Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, is there anybody else?
My name is Ron Spanley. We own Texas Heritage Children's Ranch next to the Dollar General going in. Is there any kind of regulations that restricts on the Dollar General part to build next to a school, right next to it? Because I haven't looked up the regulations for licensed child cares. And we take precedent. We were there first, so I think I will research that. And I agree with the other people, crime does follow. It's not exactly a nice store. It doesn't draw the most high dollar people into the country, into the store. I'm not for them, I'm not against building. I'm not against improvement. But I think they could find a better spot to do it, And we've been there for 28 years, and we just kind of hate to be put upon, okay? And we have a good reputation, the whole area around there and stuff, and it's already getting bad enough with all the traffic. So now that was my statement there. Now I understand there's a requirement for a business like that to have an 8-foot masonry wall around the structure, around the property, and how far out? In other words, how far would their wall go to the property line?
Staff will answer the question once we close the public hearing.
Pardon?
The staff will answer that question once we close the public hearing.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you.
Okay. All right, does anybody else out in the audience have any comments or questions? All right, then, we'll close the public hearing at 6:20. Commissioners, comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I'd just make a couple general comments. First of all, I had no idea that this was a Dollar General. We're not voting on Dollar General tonight. We're voting on a zoning change. And I'm being very honest with you. Until you folks brought that up, we had no idea what's going on out there. And we've seen this before, where it's a project that people object to, but as the mayor pointed out once, we're not voting on the project, we're voting on the zoning.
Question, what's going to happen with the rest of the property?
Hi, I actually don't know what's happening with the remainder of the property. My client's only purchasing the 1.8 acres at the corner. So as far as I know right now, it will remain undeveloped at this time. And the remainder, with the exception of the piece to the north, that's zoned the general business district, but then the remainder of the property would continue to be zoned single family.
Well,
You'd like to address the questions from the audience and go ahead and provide those answers?
Yeah, so I'll address the ones that staff can, and then I'll kick it back over. So it seemed like the biggest question for staff was about the screening. So essentially anywhere, so if this zoning goes through and the property gets platted and goes through the site plan process, they will be required to install an 8-foot masonry wall adjacent to all properties zoned single family or used for single family. So essentially they would be required to install that 8-foot masonry wall along this property line and this property line. Inside that 8-foot masonry wall, they would be required to install a 20-foot landscape buffer with a shade tree every 30 feet and 10 shrubs every 50 feet. Additionally, don't think they're quite there at this stage yet, but just as kind of general UDC information, anywhere that there is vehicular use would need to be screened from the right-of-way. They would have to do all of the typical Unified Development Code site design standards.
To address a couple of the questions, first with regards to security, there will be security cameras. There will be appropriate downward lighting to ensure that the site is properly lit, but it doesn't spill over. So that we believe that the cameras and the lighting can help accommodate any security concerns. Also, in terms of truck deliveries, there will be 1 to 2 trucks per week, and they will be only during business hours, which are 8 to 10. And then in terms of proximity to a school, this zoning is appropriate for our proposed use, and as zoned now, there could be bars or other sort of more intense uses at this corner. So we feel that it's appropriate at this location, and in terms of the school, we don't think that there's an impact there. Thank you.
If your people are not aware, FM 1518 is a state road. Doesn't belong to the city. We are trying to accumulate enough money to help pay for expansion of 1518. I think we've got most of it, not quite, but pretty close. As far as Arlen's, the Dollar General store that's been there for I don't know how many years. I've been there 46 years. I've never seen a robbery. Only robbery I've seen is kids stealing stuff out of the store and getting caught. I just don't feel comfortable with all that property just remaining empty. I'm sorry, but I don't agree with it.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
And I apologize, you probably said it earlier, but how many negatives are in this package you gave us?
I'm sorry, can you say that one
How
more
many
time?
negatives?
There were 20, There were 21 oppositions. We received no in favor, no neutral, 21 oppositions.
Is that enough to trigger the
It is not. So it's actually the supermajority out of state law is only within that required 200-foot notice. And I did the calculation before the meeting, and we only have 5% within that buffer. So.
It's just a comment. As Commissioner Outlaw mentioned, that this is a rezoning case, and that we're not voting on Dollar General itself. However, I will say that as a resident of the area, I have a lot of concern with the cookie cutter buildings that Dollar General provides. We just recently had a couple projects, a convenience store at Maskey Road in 1518 and the 7-Eleven at 3009 and 35. And they provided significantly enhanced exteriors above what their standard practices are. It's much more fitting with what we're seeking to do in our city. I would hope and expect that Dollar General, hoping to build in areas such as this with homes literally across the street that are starting in the 350s, that a company could do much better with their exterior facade than what their standard setup is. But again, that said, this is a zoning case and not necessarily about Dollar General. That will come up with the site plan, and we'll have that opportunity to have that discussion at that time.
It's quite a dilemma. And I understand where the residents are coming from. You look at, Emily's still got the map up there, property number 5, which is directly, not across the street, but directly behind the homes, is zoned general business. And she had that list of possible uses up there, and you can see with the current zoning, any of these things could be put in right behind your houses, let alone across the street. And they don't have to come to us and ask to rezone the property. My problem is these issues never come up until somebody wants to build something, and then it's not an argument about proper zoning. It's an argument about, well, we don't want that and we don't want that. This would be okay, but not that. And that's not how the system works. Neighborhood services may or may not be the appropriate zoning out there. It's certainly more restrictive than general business. Theoretically, now, hope you understand, we're only making a recommendation. City Council has the final say. And we could recommend disapproval of this zoning change and leave that front piece of property as general business. Now, that may put Dollar General out on the street. They may end up having to look someplace else for a piece of property. But you take a look at that list of permitted uses of what might end up on that corner, or somebody buys the corner and the lot next to it. And, I know the Spanleys. We go back a long way. I used to be the fire marshal, did many fire inspections out there at the daycare. Right now there's a buffer between your property and where Dollar General is going to go. But theoretically, somebody could, that whole frontage on 1518 is general business, and there's the list of what could end up being built there. So I'm not sure what the right answer is. Again, we disapprove or recommend disapproval. Maybe the next guy wants to build a car wash on that corner.
To dovetail on Commissioner Outlaw's comment, downzoning to neighborhood services is probably most appropriate for this corner to take away a number of uses that most certainly would not be desirable for the community there. 24-hour unattended car wash with lights on all night long probably be a lot worse than a Dollar General store that closes at 10 o'clock. Regardless of what demographics are shopping there. I think it's about all I have on this. Commissioners, does anybody else have a comment?
Yeah, I have a comment for staff. why muddy the water by giving us a zoning change proposal and telling us what's going to be built there? It just adds confusion and adds angst and anger and whatever to the process. We're talking about a zoning change tonight. That's all we can talk about is a zoning change. Yet you muddy the water by saying we're going to put a Dollar General in there. I personally think it's the wrong place for a Dollar General. I've heard your CEO speak, and that doesn't seem to me to be the proper location that he has talked about as to where a Dollar General should be. It's more of a rural type of store, not a store that you stick smack dab in a neighborhood somewhere. So, city staff, please don't complicate the issue and muddy the water and just make it harder to make a decision on something like this by putting the proposed development inside of a neighborhood services. I personally think neighborhood services is the right zoning for this corner. But I can't say I'm too happy about what's proposed for it.
All right, commissioners, if nobody has any other comments or questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, make a motion to recommend to City Council on Zone ZC 2018-005 that the request be denied.
Okay, I have a motion for denial from Commissioner Greenwald.
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Brode. Are there any other comments or questions?
I'd like, if I may, I'd like to mirror what Mr. Outlaw said a few minutes ago. These issues come up when somebody wants to build on a certain lot. But for the neighbors in Willow Grove subdivision, you are surrounded by general business. If you're not happy, you need to speak now and start action now, not wait till somebody wants to come and build again. You're surrounded by GB. So I would recommend you guys study the code, study the UDC, and figure out where you want to go.
Any other comments? All right, commissioners, real briefly before I call for the vote, because this is a recommendation to council on a rezoning, if you're voting in favor of this to recommend denial of this rezoning request, in addition to casting your vote, please state the reason as to why you are voting so. And with that, I'll call for a vote.
What you're thinking. My reason is I think the neighborhood service is not the problem. The problem I see is 2/3 of a lot that has been essentially chopped up and left to go. I don't like it. What's going to happen to that piece of property? Other than another general business or car wash or something else in there. But that's the reason I don't want it.
Votes aye. All right, Commissioner Bro.
Dear Mr. Greenwald, I'll vote aye.
All right, Commissioner Ray.
I vote aye. The motion is to recommend disapproval, correct?
The motion is to recommend disapproval.
I vote nay.
Mr. Evans.
Aye.
And I vote aye. So motion for recommendation of denial to council passes 4 ayes, 2 nays.
Can you provide us a roll call? I don't think we got all the ayes and nays. Who voted aye and who voted nay?
Commissioner Bro voted aye. Commissioner Greenwald voted aye. Commissioner Ray voted aye. Commissioner Outlaw voted nay. Commissioner Evans voted aye, and I voted nay.
Thank you.
So we will be making a recommendation to council to not approve the rezoning request. For the people in the audience, just statements of fact that even though the recommendation for denial is there, council can take this up. The applicant can apply or appeal this decision, and council does have the authority and the ability to change that and overrule us. So you will need to attend the council meeting if you wish to continue with this. All right, next item on the agenda, public hearing 4B ZC 2018-004. Hold a public hearing, consider and make a recommendation on an amendment of Part 3, Schertz Code of Ordinances, Unified Development Code, UDC, to Article 8, Special Uses and General Regulations, subsection 21.8.2, Accessory Buildings, Uses and Structures, Associated Code of Ordinance Amendment. This item was tabled at our August 22nd meeting for consideration at a joint council meeting, which happened last night. So I guess before we begin discussion, I need a motion to pull this off the table for further discussion.
Mr. Chairman, point of inquiry, maybe. There are other things on the agenda, and I think there's a lot of people in the audience who are here for the other items on the agenda, not for the shed discussion. Would it be feasible to move this to the end of the meeting and get through the other business first? So people in the audience don't have to sit through all this.
Everybody okay with that?
I have no confidence we'll get through this in a timely fashion.
Actually, Emily, were you recommending that we're going to continue to table this, correct?
We are. We're going to recommend that we table it based on last night's discussion. That way we can formulate those different options and then bring it back.
Well, excuse me then. I'm sorry.
You weren't at the meeting this morning.
Thank God.
So just for a procedural question then, do we need to untable it, retable it, or we just leave it?
Since we published it with a public hearing, I think we technically need to open the public hearing, close the public hearing, and then
Table it.
table it.
All right, so we...
Table it.
All right, so motion to untable.
So moved.
All right, motion by Mr. Greenwald, second.
I'll second.
Mr. Ray. All right, call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries 6-0. All right, we'll open the public hearing at 6:37. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please step up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. And seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing at 6:38. All right, Commissioners, the recommendation was made that we retable this until staff can bring back proper language to us. So I have a motion to table this.
So moved.
Okay, motion to table by Mr. Greenwald.
Second.
Second by Mr. Ray. Call for a vote.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries 6-0. All right. We knocked that out pretty quick, didn't we? All right, items for individual consideration. Item 5A, WA 2018-005. Consider and act upon a request for approval of a waiver regarding an on-site sewage facilities for the Liscano Estate subdivision, an approximately 10-acre tract of land located at the northeast corner of the intersection of Werseguin Road and Werseguin Road, more specifically described as 11917 Werseguin Road, City of Schertz, Bexar County. Emily.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is a waiver associated with the Liscano Estate subdivision, which you'll be hearing next. So this is the subject property. You can see it's actually in the bend of Werseguin, so it's adjacent to Werseguin and also adjacent to Werseguin. It is hot, Mr. Outlaw, you're right. So it's this 10 acres identified by the green. The desire is to split it into 4 residential lots. So I know this did cause some confusions with my staff report, so I'm going to clear it up first. It's one subdivision, a request for one waiver, but it will be, it's essentially a request for each individual lot to have its own on-site sewage facility that would be permitted through Bexar County. So it's one subdivision, one waiver, but essentially 4 actual systems. So the project engineer did provide a letter indicating the different options that they had for sewer at this time. Where this subject site is located, there is a dual certificate of convenience and necessity for sewer, with the City of Schertz responsible for collection and San Antonio River Authority, SARA, responsible for treatment. And then, if approved, the OSSF systems would actually be permitted through Bexar County itself. So the request for an on-site sewage facility is due to the lengthy distance to the nearest sewer line connection and costs associated with building that line. The applicant did provide this letter that indicates several different options. They actually provided 3 options of potential connection. The closest connection would be at the intersection of Sage Park and Delane Park near Banig Drive. It's approximately 5,930 feet northwest of the proposed subdivision. Alternatively, they did provide another option that would be a connection to the existing system adjacent to Graytown Road. I'm going to skip over to the exhibit that they provided us. This would require gravity sewer and manholes to Graytown Road and would cost approximately $716,000. The project engineer did provide a third option as well. That would be to connect to a future 10-inch gravity system west of the subdivision proposed by Sarah's master plan that's scheduled for construction in 2023. And that proposal would range in cost $94,000 to $109,000. Our engineering department also provided a memo of support stating that the waiver is consistent with similar waivers granted in this general area. They also stated that they verified the proposed preliminary plat and the associated waiver is laid out in a manner to provide for connection to a public sanitary sewer in the future. Staff is making a recommendation of approval of the waiver, and there is a representative of the applicant here if there's any questions for them as well.
All right, commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, I broached I called Emily yesterday, I think, to ask the question about because the way the document is worded, it sounded like one facility, and then when I look at the plat for 4 lots, trying to figure out where it's going to go. So she enlightened me that it is, in fact, each lot will have their own septic system, and I think this is probably, this may be a unique, but I would like to suggest, and I mentioned it to Emily yesterday, that in the future the memo be a little more clear about what it is that's being requested.
And we had that same conversation this morning.
But with that said, I'll make a motion that that we approve ZC 2018 nope, I'm on the wrong page here. I forgot to, yeah. WA 2018-005, a waiver for an on-site sewage facility associated with PC 2018-031.
All right, commissioners, we have a motion for approval. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Bro. Any other comments or questions?
Does the engineering firm understand the water table out there?
I would assume.
Does anybody know about the water table?
All right. Any other?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the staff. Looking through the UDC and that stuff, when we do these septic systems and that stuff, it says that when system is available, they're supposed to connect to it. Do we ever really go back and make them connect to it?
I know we have that ability. I'm not aware of us actually enforcing that, but I would assume that if the sanitary sewer goes adjacent to their property, we would ask them to connect at that time.
Okay.
I'll just add, I haven't dealt with it here in Schertz, but living out in the country and having been on septic, typically what happens when sewer becomes available, you're offered an option to tie in, usually at a discount over what it would actually cost. And barring that, if and when your septic tank ever fails, then you will not be granted a permit to replace it, and you will be required to tie in at that time.
Yeah, it just wasn't clear how we handled that. Thank you.
All right, any other comments or questions? All right, call for a vote.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Aye. That's 4 ayes, 2 nays, motion carries. All right, next item on the agenda, 5B, PC 2018-031, consider and act upon a request for approval of a preliminary plat of the Liscano Estate subdivision, an approximately 10-acre tract of land located at the northeast corner of the intersection of Werseguin Road and Werseguin Road, more specifically described as 11917 Werseguin Road, City of Schertz, Bexar County. Emily.
So once again, this is a subject property Ware Seguin. The subject property is outlined in green. So the applicant is proposing to develop the 10 acres into 4 separate residential lots. So lot 1 being 2.4 acres, lot 2 being 2.399, lot 3 being 2.399, and lot 4 being 2.4. All lots do have frontage onto Ware Seguin Road. In order to reduce the number of driveways onto this portion of Ware Seguin, all 4 lots will be utilizing a 40-foot shared access easement, which you can see by this hash line here. 15 feet of it goes across lot 2 and 15 feet on lot 3. In order for lots 1 and 4, so this is lot 1 again, this is lot 4, they will have shared access onto that shared driveway. Additionally, there is a 1-foot vehicular non-access easement across all the rest of the portions adjacent to Ware Seguin. So along this property line up until the shared access easement, that way they are not allowed to put driveways onto Ware Seguin in addition to the one that's shared. The applicant has provided a tree affidavit that indicates that the site does not contain protected or heritage trees. No parkland is being dedicated. However, a fee in lieu in the amount of $1,000 per dwelling unit will be collected. The site is serviced by a 12-inch City of Schertz water line, Sarah, CPS, AT&T, CenterPoint Energy, and Spectrum. Y'all have just passed the request waiver to allow for each of these lots to have a on-site septic system. The city engineer has reviewed and approved the preliminary drainage report. Sidewalks are required along Ware Seguin Road for the length of the subdivision and will be designed to meet the City of Schertz regulations. The portion of Ware Seguin, which is adjacent, the portion of the properties that are adjacent to this section of Ware Seguin Road, it is identified as a secondary rural arterial consisting of 90 feet of right-of-way with a 48 feet width of pavement, including curbs and gutters. Adjacent to the frontage of these lots, the current Ware Seguin is 60 feet. So they are dedicating 0.402 acres of right-of-way adjacent to the frontage of the properties and equal to reach their portion of the 90 feet of desired right-of-way. Additionally, this portion of Lot 1 does abut the other section of Ware Seguin Road, and that portion is considered a residential collector with a 70 feet of right-of-way. They are dedicating 5 feet of right-of-way adjacent to this property line in order to reach their half of the desired 70 feet. The proposed preliminary, oh my gosh. The proposed preliminary plat is consistent with applicable requirements for the property ordinances and regulations, and staff is making a recommendation of approval.
All righty. Commissioners, comments, questions? I just mentioned from our conversation this morning, I like how we handled this with the driveway and only having one point of access for the 4 lots, especially that close to a 90-degree turn in the street. So that was a good choice. All right, hearing no questions or comments, we'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we, is this approval or recommendation of approval? I'm still confused.
This is to approve a preliminary.
We're approving, okay. I recommend approval of PC 2018-031, a preliminary plat for the Lizcano Estate subdivision.
All right, have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Ray. Any other comments or questions, Commissioners?
Yeah, that's right.
All right, we'll call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. 6 ayes, no nays. All right, next item on the agenda, item 5C, WA 2018-007. Consider and act upon a request for approval of a waiver regarding on-site sewage facilities for the Gusta Fierro subdivision, an approximately 5-acre tract of land located at 6197 File Road, City of Schertz, Bexar County. Emily.
So just to get your bearings, this is File Road, and the subject property is outlined here in green. It is approximately 5 acres, and they are proposing to preliminary plat it into one residential lot in order to construct a home. They are seeking approval of a waiver in order to install a privately owned on-site sewage facility, and the subject property is currently undeveloped with the exception of a barn, and it is currently zoned single-family residential agricultural. This is a waiver that Mr. Gary Hill, the project engineer, did provide in order for us to evaluate the proposal. The request for an on-site sewage facility is due to the lengthy distance to the nearest sewer line connection and the costs associated. The project engineer did state that the closest future connection point would be a planned manhole for the future Sarah collection line approximately 1,500 feet southeast of the North Greytown Underpass at IH-10. The project engineer did indicate that a theoretical alignment for an off-site sanitary sewer main extension from the future manhole extending approximately 8,730 linear feet, a bore under North Greytown Road, and then within the File Road right-of-way until it reaches the southwesterly corner of the proposed lot could be an option to provide sanitary sewer. However, that option would cost approximately $379,000. So as you can see, this is the subject property, and they did identify the future Sarah sanitary sewer connection line and the theoretical off-site sanitary sewer main extension to that manhole. Our engineering department did review this and provided a memo of support in granting the waiver. They stated that it is consistent with similar waivers granted for larger lot residential developments in this area of Schertz. They did state that the proposed preliminary plat is laid out similar to Lizcano in a way that when sanitary sewer is available, the lot will be able to connect. Staff is making a recommendation of approval, and there is a representative of the project here if there's any questions.
All righty, commissioners. Comments, questions?
Emily, in looking at the Greytown wastewater system map,
yes, sir.
The orange lines represent, it says original agreement wastewater collection line. Is that
Let me get to where.
Is that Sarah, or is that what the engineer was defining?
Just a second. Just to be clear on this map.
Yeah, this one here. So those whose map is that? I guess is the question.
That is Sarah's map.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what they hope to be able to do in the future.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right, call for a motion.
I move that we approve case WA's 2018-007 waiver on-site sewage facility associated with PC 2018-030.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. And just to clarify, that would be for a waiver for WA 2018-007, the PC 2018-030 that you mentioned, Commissioner Bro, was for the preliminary plat. So we can amend the motion for WA 2018-007, correct?
I was just reading the paper.
Okay. All right, call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries, 6 ayes, no nays. Item 5D, PC 2018-030, consider an act upon a request for approval of a preliminary plat of the Augusta Fierro subdivision and approximately 5-acre tract of land located at 6197 File Road, City of Schertz, Bexar County.
So just to state it again, this is File Road, and the subject property here is outlined in green. It is 5 acres. They're proposing to preliminary plat it into one residential lot in order to construct a residential home, and it is currently zoned single-family residential agricultural. The proposed lot does have frontage onto File Road, which you can see here. This is File. This is the subject property. The applicant has submitted a tree affidavit indicating that the site does contain protected and heritage, but at this time, none will be removed or damaged. There is no parkland being dedicated or proposed, so a fee in lieu of parkland dedication in the amount of $1,000 per dwelling unit will be collected. The site is serviced by an 8-inch City of Schertz water line. Y'all have just approved to allow the on-site sewage facility for this property, with it being approved and permitted through Bexar County. It's also within CPS, AT&T, and Spectrum service areas. The applicant, the city engineer has reviewed and approved the preliminary drainage report. The preliminary plat identifies a proposed 2.5 feet right-of-way dedication along the entire frontage of File Road for the entire frontage of the lot. This dedication will result in a half width of 25 feet, which alleviates and achieves the ultimate 50 feet of right-of-way for their responsibility, their half. The proposed preliminary plat is consistent with the applicable requirements for the property ordinance and regulations, and staff is making a recommendation of approval of the preliminary plat.
All right, commissioners, comments or questions?
A question, is there an easement for Sarah on this plat?
There is not.
No?
So there's a 14-foot electric, gas, telephone, cable TV easement, but there is not a easement for Sarah.
So Sarah has notes up at the top middle of the plat. Is that just their generic plat
Those are
notes?
their standard plat notes, yes, sir, since it is within their service area.
And wastewater lines typically go down the center of the roadway, normally anyway. Commissioner Ray and I were looking at that Greytown map, and you can see when you look at it, even with what they're showing on there, this particular piece of property is still quite a ways from where they're going to have a wastewater line. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve PC 2018-030, approval of preliminary plat for the Augusta Fierro subdivision.
All right, have a motion by Commissioner Outlaw. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, second by Commissioner Ray. Any other comments, questions? All right, call for a vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. 6 ayes, no nays, motion carries. All right, next item on the agenda, workshop discussion. Workshop discussion, possible action on the proposed Planning and Zoning Commission bylaws. And Mr. James is coming out of hiding.
Briefly, you may recall some time ago the commission discussed updating their bylaws. Committee was appointed to work on that. I think the general goal of it was to simplify the bylaws, to make them more usable, and to deal with the issue of alternates. What you have in your packet is the outcome of that. That I think is fairly straightforward. Again, the goal was to try to deal with things likely to come up and yet not overly complicate it, make it easy to understand. So if we have an issue in the future, we're able to look to the bylaws and spell that out. The other part of it is to eliminate a lot of the things that were irrelevant because they're really a function of the Unified Development Code. So with that, be happy to answer any questions. That's it. Y'all got it in your packet. I mean, I can answer any questions, but it's fairly straightforward.
Going over them, the only thing that I saw, just a typo, is on
Okay.
section 3A, meetings. Meetings shall be generally held on the second and fourth Tuesdays of the month.
Wednesdays.
Be Wednesdays.
We'll correct that.
Mr. Chairman, I know we've put a lot of time and effort as a member of the subcommittee trying to put these together, and by and large, I think this was a good result. Although I would posit that the only one that really understands the motion table is the mayor. That said, my only concern or my only objection to what we have before us is Section 17, effective abstentions. This was something that was put in place by City Council, I don't know, a year or two ago, and it was primarily a procedural move to reduce the potential of the mayor having to vote and solve ties. I personally believe that there are times when issues come up before this group where I could have a personal reason for not wanting to vote either way. And I think, given that you vote anyway, we're not putting anybody on the spot by forcing somebody to vote on something that they may or may not want to vote on. So I would recommend, the only change I would make to these bylaws, and depending on how my fellow commissioners feel, is that if I feel a need to abstain, I think it should be recorded as an abstention and not a nay vote.
An abstention is a no. And it doesn't matter how you want to record it. I mean, if you abstain, it's counted as a no in a zoning case. On any item, really.
And where is that?
So,
I mean, just point me in the right direction. If that's what the law says, there's not much I can do about it.
Okay, so go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to let you.
Well, I don't have the case off the top of my head.
Yeah,
but I mean,
it's generally a case law issue,
Yeah.
as I understand it. You won't look in the local government code and find it spells that out. But case law generally, as I understood it, is where that stems from.
Right, so think about it this way. So like zoning cases are predicated on votes of yes, votes of approval. So anything other than a yes or an aye or however you want to say it is a no. So whether it's an abstention or an outright no, anything other than an aye has the same impact. We're going to count it as a no when that goes forward. We can inform City Council that you abstained, but it won't change the outcome. For example, earlier today on the one where it was 4-3, it's required. Well, if that had been a vote to approve, it's going to require 4 ayes to go forward.
That's right.
So if it had been 3-3, it would have failed. If there had been if the seventh vote, maybe somebody had abstained, it would have effectively been a 3-4.
Okay.
Yeah, the motion was to deny.
It was this time.
And it achieved the aye votes necessary to.
And I hadn't thought about that. The rules say that for something to move forward or be approved, it requires 4 aye votes. And so I understand what you're saying, Dan. Even if I were to abstain.
If I were going to disagree with anything written here, it would be with A, not B. I mean, to me, it doesn't really matter why you abstain or how it's recorded, because the ultimate, I mean, I understand that this comes from the council, but the fact of the matter is, in this context, it's going to be a no if it's not an aye.
But what kinds of votes does that apply to? I understand.
So it applies to everything, if you will.
The answer is probably here.
Yeah. Right. Well, it applies. Yeah, every vote you would have.
So everything we do requires, in the affirmative, requires at least 4 yeses. So it doesn't matter whether we, in the end, I think what you and Dan are trying to tell me is it doesn't matter. An abstention, while it may not be a nay, it's not an aye.
That's right. Same effect.
Okay.
And I think that the comments from a previous conversation I had with Mr. Outlaw, it's mainly when the commissioner's absent. regarding the next meeting and the approval of the minutes, that, because that commissioner wasn't here, that we
Yeah, I think that's
typically abstain from.
And I think that's, to be blunt, there isn't a point in that. What you are not voting for is the accuracy of those minutes, which is why y'all all abstain from it. You're simply voting to say, these are in fact the minutes of the meeting, officially accurate or not. And so I get why everybody does that. It's
ministerial.
It's not really the basis of the purpose of the minutes, though.
Approval of minutes is ministerial. You don't have to be present at the meeting where the minutes were taken in order to vote on the minutes.
Yeah. Just the same way if you miss the meeting, you watch the tape, and you go, hey, technically there's something wrong here, we need to change. You guys would all do that. I mean, it's...
All right, is anybody else?
If you, here's a good situation. If you truly don't want to vote on something for whatever reason, if a commissioner physically leaves the building, then they are not counted as present. Would that be correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in that situation, the minutes would reflect that you were not present for the item.
So that could affect a quorum. It could affect a supermajority vote.
Sure. Yeah,
it could affect something like that. So it's just, if you truly don't want to vote on something, get up and leave. Otherwise, you'll be counted as a no. But that doesn't need to be in the bylaws.
Yeah.
All right, so our agenda listed as discussion possible action. As for action steps, we would approve them and recommend to
So if you
council.
approve it, we take it up to council. We'd probably do one more legal review with the attorneys, because if they have a concern on the language, we cut and pasted this from council, so we'd probably raise that with council at the time if we need to tweak it for that purposes. Your point was to adopt what council had, and so it suits that purpose. So yeah, that would be the direction we'd go.
All right, so we'll take that as a motion for approval.
I'll make the motion to
All right.
approve the minutes or the,
Make a recommendation to
bylaws
city
as
council to
presented.
approve the bylaws.
with the change on the.
Change of the date.
Yeah. All right. So
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Greenwald,
Second.
second by Commissioner Burrow. Any other comments?
Just a quick question, Mr. Chairman. The motion was to ask for or recommend approval on them as written, basically.
Yes. Okay. With the correction of the Tuesday to Wednesday.
Right. Thank you.
All right, call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 6 ayes, no nays, motion carries. Next item on the agenda, request by commissioners to place items on a future agenda. Does anyone have anything? All right, announcements by commissioners, city and community events attended, continuing education events attended. Anybody have anything to share? Announcements by city staff.
So many of you commissioners have already met our newest planner, Nick Copier. He is coming to us pretty fresh out of school from Trinity University. And in just a second, I'll let him tell you a little bit about himself and introduce himself as well. But I did want to bring him forward and introduce him to everyone. So with that, Nick, if there's anything you'd like to say.
Hi, my name's Nick Copier. Like Bryce said, I started as the new planner last week. I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity, and say I'm really looking forward to working with everyone in the city of Schertz, including the commission. So thank you for your guys' time.
Your degree? Your degree?
What's that?
What's your degree in?
Urban Studies and Urban Design.
I'm sure Bryce has already told you that when you start coming up and making presentations, you need to make sure you wear your tap shoes because we're going to make you dance.
That's what I've been told.
All right, does anybody have anything else? All right, meeting adjourned 7:09.